For the last few weeks, I've been reading one of the most inspiring books that I've ever read, and it's called To Remain a Jew by Rabbi Yitzchak Zilber. And I hope that at the end of this pep talk that all of you Jewish moms will run out and buy this book. It's a phenomenally inspiring book. What it is, it's the life story of a man who he stayed an Orthodox Jew in Stalinist Russia. So probably most of you know, like we've all heard about Stalin, but just like to put things into perspective, like Stalin, people now think that he was responsible for at least 20 million murder, like deaths. Like he killed over 20 million of his citizens, and some of the estimates are far higher than that. So basically, this and like his biggest enemy, let's say, was he hated Jews, and he hated. More than that, he hated religious people. He hated people who he thought like the enemies of communism are people who believe in God. So like his worst enemy in the world of Stalin and his administration were religious Jews. And this person, Rabbi Zilber, he manages to stay an Orthodox Jew, like basically under he's basically risking his life. Like he at any moment he could have become like one of those 20 million people who died, who was killed by Stalin, but still he just sticks with it. And he's like, in Russia, in the Soviet Union, then Shabbat, Saturday, was just a regular working day. It was a day when people went to work and kids went to school. And so this is a person, he went through school and then he was working in a factory, and then he became a professor in an institute, in like a university, and then after that he was in a forced labor camp for 2 years. And somehow through all of it, he never ever broke Shabbat. It is just phenomenal. And somehow he just keeps on, he's secretly keeping Shabbat, secretly keeping kosher, secretly learning Torah. And it's just amazing to see all the different ways in which he's somehow, just like how this is just his top priority, is just keeping Jewish law. And it's, I don't know, it's incredible. To me, it's incredibly inspiring and fascinating to see how he always manages to keep halacha under so much tremendous difficulty. I'm about 300 pages into the book now, but one of the stories that I found the most inspiring is actually closer to the beginning of the book. It takes place during World War II, and he somehow, Rabbi Zilber, somehow he's always been avoiding the draft. Like he hasn't been drafted, and of course he doesn't want to get drafted, because why would he want to risk his life fighting for this evil empire? Why would he want to risk his life fighting for Stalin, basically? And the death rates were really high. Soldiers were dying on the front from hunger, and it was just incredibly dangerous to become a Soviet soldier. So he was trying to stay out of the army. So this is what Rabbi Zilber says. We were in the very midst of war, and conditions at the front lines were difficult. They desperately needed more soldiers. People were snatched right off the street and sent to fight. Once, in 1942, I was walking on the street on Shabbos without my documents. I was hoping that I would be left alone, but a policeman stopped me. Documents! I don't have any documents, I answered. He took down my name and my address and declared, "You are mobilized. You have half an hour to pack." This, I remind you, was on Shabbos. I came home and told my father, "Papa, I was mobilized into the army immediately. They gave me half an hour to get ready." My father asked me, "Did you finish the weekly parsha?" Every week, a Jew is supposed to finish reading the weekly Torah portion twice, together with Targum Onkelos once. Just so people don't understand that, so you're supposed to we're required to read the Torah portion twice, and to also read the Aramaic translation, which is called the Targum. Rabbi Zilber continues, "I usually had time to finish reading everything before Shabbos, but occasionally I didn't. No, I told my father. So what are you waiting for? You will not have a chumash there with you. Finish it now." So I did. But one cannot joke around with the government. After I finished reading, I went there. And once again, for some reason, my mobilization was delayed. Instead, they hired me as a teacher in another technical school and gave me an exemption from the draft. To this day, I can hear my father of blessed memory calmly saying, "You didn't finish the parsha, and you will not have a chumash there, so finish it now." So, what I find so inspiring about this story is not the miracle that happens at the end, because the book is filled with many, many miracles, some of which are really far more dramatic than this one. But I just think it's so incredible. Like, you're in the middle of this total darkness. You're in this, like, Stalinist Russia. You're totally powerless. And you could just be killed or sent away to, like, a forced labor camp at any moment. And Zell, like, they are just, he and his father, and then his wife out, when he gets married, his wife, they are just doing everything to keep this law, to keep these rules, and to stay observant Jews. And so I just, like, the whole time I've been reading this, I've just been thinking to myself, so, like, what would I have done in that situation? Would I have stayed an Orthodox Jew? Like, would I have done, like, if someone basically had a gun to my head and said don't keep Shabbos, like, would I still keep Shabbos? And I keep on thinking, no, I wouldn't. Like, like, at this point, like, I'm an observant Jew, and I do my best, to, like, keep, the rules I'm supposed to keep. But I'm pretty flaky about things. Like, let's say I have, like, a fingernail, like, sort of, I'm not proud of this, but let's say I have, like, a fingernail, like, sort of falling off, like, and I notice it on Shabbat. Am I actually going to wait until the end of Shabbat? I sort of secretly go, like, and I'm, like, so flaky about keeping Shabbat, and I do try, and I'm not proud of it. But like, I'm so flaky as it is. Like, how could I then, how if I was actually if I had to risk my life to do it, would I do it? And I just keep on sort of, like, thinking, like, no, like, I would probably wouldn't be one of those people who just assimilated and just gave up everything. I wouldn't be Rabbi Zilber. But then this morning I remembered something. I remembered a story from my own life. And I'm not trying to exactly compare the two. It's very, very different. But I sort of learned a bit of a lesson from sort of a sort of parallel experience that I've had. So I became religious during during the summer after my junior year of college. I was a student. I went to college at Bowdoin College. It's a small liberal arts college in Maine. That's spelled Bowdoin. Looks like it's Bowdoin, but it's actually pronounced Bowdoin. And basically, like, Jewish life there is basically zilch. Certainly observant Jewish life, like keeping kosher, keeping Shabbat. It's like basically there's no one there like that. And even, like, the Jewish student organization is, at least when I was there, maybe it's changed since then, but, like, when I was there, it was basically, like, almost completely inactive. So I came back for one final semester, observant. I only had one final semester before I graduated in the middle of the year in January. So I just had, like, one last semester to be a frum Jew at Bowdoin. And so I was there. I had my one pot, I had my one kosher pot. I didn't eat in the cafeteria at all. And I'd cook everything in that one pot with my one sponge. And I kept Shabbat. I remember, like, I wouldn't go to, like, the different events, or I wouldn't go to, like, the various parties that there were. The only thing I would do, I would go, like, on Friday night, I would go to the library, to the college library. The problem was that there were, like, automatic doors, so I would wait until someone who wasn't Jewish was walking in, and then, like, I would, like, run in after them. I remember, like, on Friday nights there was a Sri Lankan exchange student who was really sweet, and I would wait until he would stay until, like, the almost midnight, until almost closing time. I remember, like, I would, like, wait for him to leave, so I would, like, be able to follow him out of the door. And about once every 3 weeks, I would go down to Boston. I had friends at the Chabad House of Boston University, and that was really, like, a really wonderful place to spend Shabbat. I really loved the women that I met there. But I know, like, they would say to me, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing up in Bowdoin? Like, why don't you transfer? Why don't you come and spend every Shabbat with us? Like, how can you manage there spending Shabbat, like, all on your own? It's so miserable. But what they didn't understand is that it really, they thought that was tremendous mesirut nefesh, like tremendous self-sacrifice for me to be keeping Shabbat at Bowdoin. Like, basically, I didn't mention this, but I was the only Jew, I realized later, within a 50-mile radius who was keeping Shabbat. The closest person keeping Shabbat, I think, was the Chabad rabbi in Portland, Maine, which is about 50 miles away. So I was so isolated. I was so on my own. There was no shul to go to. I was just so doing this all on my own. But the thing is, like, it really, really did not feel like self-sacrifice at all. It didn't feel at all like self-sacrifice. It felt just like, in a way, it was sort of the highlight of my week. The rest of the week, I felt so isolated. I felt like I was in this, like, Jewish wasteland. Like, there's nothing happening Jewishly. I was all on my own, and, the Jewish students that were there didn't like me very much because I was an Orthodox Jew, and they didn't like that. So So, but Shabbat was like this island within this, it was an island of Jewishness and connection with my history and connection with Hashem within this sort of very isolated, sort of depressing experience of being an Orthodox Jew at Bodin, um, and um, and in a way it was wonderful. It was what kept me going was that Shabbat, that very isolated Shabbat when I was all on my own, but didn't matter. Like it was what was connecting me with the Jewish people, with Hashem, with my history, with everything. It was the highlight of my week. So, just in conclusion, I want to bless all of us Jewish moms. I think that all of us as mothers, there's things that we wish that we could do better. Like all of us have our failings as mothers. Like we do things that we feel bad about with our children, and but I think that if we can remember, like think of Rabbi Zilber, like how much he longed, how much he gave up for Shabbat, for that connection. And I think like I can after thinking about my experience at Bowdoin, I can understand him. I can understand how this was what kept him going. It sounds like it was like this terrible experience to be keeping Shabbat and kosher and learning Torah in the Soviet Union, but I can understand it like just within the context of my experience at Bowdoin. I understand it's what gave him life. It's what made him feel connected. What made him feel connected with his people, with Hashem, and so like despite our failings as mothers, if we're raising our children as Jews, we're raising our children to keep Shabbat, to keep the mitzvot, to learn Torah, raising them in like a Jewish environment, like what we're to remember like what we're giving them. Like we're giving them so much, all the things. So okay, like we should work on ourselves and we should give them more and trying to be the best mothers that we can, but even just that minimum of keeping Shabbat and raising our kids to be proud Jews and with a sense of Jewish history, it's like we are giving them so much. We're enabling them to feel connected with their history, with their people, with Hashem, and that unto itself, it's a tremendous gift. So I want to bless all of you Jewish moms with an amazing week. God